Barbara, tell us your name, please, and what your role in EMS has been.
My name is Barbara Ireland. I'm a paramedic. I started as an EMT basic in 1981, became an intermediate in 83, and a paramedic in 84. I started with a small private ambulance service, and as a paramedic I went to New Orleans Police. I was a field supervisor, I was a supervisor team leader, I was an education coordinator, and then I retired in May of 2017 as Deputy Chief over Communications.
Wow. When did you decide to get into EMS?
So, I worked at Sears in the catalog department, where you would call people and say, would you like to know what's on sale today in the Sears catalog? And I needed a full-time job. I was getting divorced, and a girl that I worked with, her brother's girlfriend was a phlebotomist at one of our hospitals, drawing blood for the lab, and they had openings. So I went to apply, and he asked, did I have a car that ran? And I said yes. And he said, is this kind of work going to bother you? And I lied through my teeth, and I said, oh, not at all. So I got the job. My first day, I ran out of the emergency room and I threw up just from watching the blood filling in the tubes. But I hung in there. It was a good job. I liked it. And the pathologist would let the phlebotomist sit in the autopsies. So a group of us went to an autopsy. I was sitting in a chair in the back because I was sure I was going to throw up or pass out. And it was very interesting. And all of a sudden I realized everybody else had left, and I was standing up by the body with the phlebotomist, and they were showing me things, and I thought it was great. So then I was dating one of the externs in the lab. He walked in the phlebotomy room and he dropped a textbook. He said, here, I signed you up to take this class. I said, what class is that? He said, it's to be an ambulance driver. I said, I don't want to be an ambulance driver. And he said, well, take the course. It might pay better for you to support your children. So a girl that I worked with, she and I took the course, but I never thought I would work at it. I left there, I went to work at another hospital as a phlebotomist, and I hated it there. So I said, well, maybe I need to trot out this EMT thing, because I had learned by that time not to say ambulance driver. So I went to work for a private service. I was there for a few months, and they had an intermediate class coming up. You had to have 6 months in the field. I had 4.5 months. But the young woman who was in charge of it, I was told, if you tell her, yes, I only have 4.5 months, but I work a lot of overtime, she didn't care. She would let you in the class. So I got in the class where I probably shouldn't have been. It was a little hard because my partner and I were in the class, and we did mostly transports, and the majority of the people in the class worked for 911 services. But we hung in there, and at the time you had to be an intermediate first and then go to paramedic school 6 months later. And this was the first class that you could go directly from intermediate to paramedic. All the paramedic classes at the time were at night. I didn't think that I could take a class at night, being a single parent, work on all day. I talked to a therapist, and he said, well, go ahead and take it. You never know what's going to come about. The class ended up being Monday, Wednesday, Friday during the day, so went straight into paramedic school. We started the class with 23. 13 went to clinicals, 11 went to precepting, 9 went to registry for the first time, and I was one of 2 who passed the first go-around. So it was exciting. So I was working as a paramedic for the private service. I wanted to go to work for New Orleans Police because that's where all the good calls were. But at the time it was hard to get hired there. All the new people ended up on second watch, which was 3 to 11. And that was the watch I couldn't work, being a single parent, but apparently nobody liked the rank on that watch, so that's where all the new people went. So finally, I got married and decided to go ahead and do it, even though it wasn't the shift that I mostly liked. So I got hired and I started working there in 1985. They had very few paramedics. We had 3 watches, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7, and we had like 2 or 3 paramedics on each one. So I hung in there. In 87 I became a field supervisor. In the 90s I became training coordinator. Then I became the supervisory team leader. Katrina hit. I was a field supervisor again. Katrina hit. After Katrina, we realized we needed more depth, and so they were going to create the deputy chief level. So they asked me if I would take over communications. I said, all I know is you key up the mic and you talk. And they said, well, we have to rebuild the CAD, we have to rebuild the radio, we have to rebuild the 911 center. There isn't anybody else we could put in that position who would know any more. So I figured, well, it'll be a good challenge for the end of my career. So I was there from the end of 2005 till I retired May of 2017. Ended up being the happiest I've ever been. I really liked it there. That's my career.
Cool. How would you characterize training when you first started, the quality of training?
It definitely was not as good as it became. My basic class I didn't feel was very good. Very few people actually worked at it afterwards. It wasn't as standardized. I'm big on standardization. I taught a basic EMT class. I taught 22. I taught at the local community college the fall and the spring semesters. And it was a lot more standardized. I really wish that my basic class would have been what we were offering.
Was that Delgado?
That was at Delgado.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
Would you suggest that the guy that dropped the book in front of you might be the guy that inspired you to get into EMS?
I would think so.
Uh-huh. Did you have any standout teachers in any of your courses?
I did. I had June Ames was one of my paramedic instructors. She was excellent. Sue Gotro, I think was her name. She was excellent. She was an excellent instructor. So I was very fortunate with them for my paramedic, my intermediate and my paramedic instructors.
What was your first call when you first got a ticket?
I don't remember if it was my first or my second day maybe, but in the private service we used to do the backup for New Orleans Police EMS, and we had a call that came in, somebody that was hit by the window of a tour bus on Decatur Street in the French Quarter. So that was one of my first calls. It wasn't too bad, but it was terrifying.
And you mentioned your first service or your first agency that you were involved with was a private ambulance service?
Medic One.
Medic One, okay. I don't know who they are.
Yep.
All right, cool. Have you been involved, well, let me get back a minute. What are the milestones or highlights of your career, do you think?
I don't know. I have to think about that. I'm not sure.
Becoming a medic?
Yeah, that was definitely one.
How about taking the deputy chief position?
Yep, that was good. That was good. Learning that I like to teach was a big thing. And I've done a lot of teaching in my career.
Cool.
I still teach.
Cool. Have you been involved in product or procedure designs in any way?
Not much, not to speak of much.
Okay. Is there one piece of word or piece of advice you would give to your younger self, and what would it be?
I think it would be to have a little more confidence in myself. I always felt in the beginning like I didn't know as much as everybody else. I was always very nervous about could other people be doing it better? It took a while before I developed some kind of confidence in my abilities.
Excellent. What advice would you give to someone just entering the field?
Do it. It's a great job. Don't doubt yourself. Well, when I say don't doubt yourself too much, that's twofold. One is be confident in what you know, but also don't be cocky. Because I think people who come in, they want to make snap decisions about what's going on, and then they try to meld the patient's symptoms to what you've decided it should be. I think something that's really scary is medics who feel like they couldn't possibly be wrong. I think that's a problem. Never stop learning.
Yeah. And what would you like the public to know about EMS?
That it's an important role, that we do a lot of education. We're not just ambulance drivers, that we're not just trauma junkies out there. We never get anybody that's firing on all 8 cylinders. Everybody's always a little, to some extent, nervous and frightened or scared or angry, and maybe to trust us.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.